No more fasting on the Day of Atonement, guys. Woohoo! Have I got your attention? In a few hours here in Australia, it's going to be the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, yeah? Welcome to Yom Kippur, mate. The Day of Atonement. And it's a grand, very serious, somber day where we have to reflect upon our sins and whip ourselves and beat ourselves and afflict our beings and not eat. You know, you heard all this jargon before? Well, I was ready to do it in a few hours, not eat for 24 hours. And Yahusha tapped me on the shoulder this morning while I was cutting someone's hair and said to me, "Why are you fasting?" And I didn't really have an answer. I started thinking through all the teachings and studies and videos and everything. What's the reason? What's the reason I'm fasting? I couldn't even come up with an answer except because I was taught to. And I said, because you told us to. He said, I told them to do a lot of things back then, but you don't have to do them now. So then I started to think, oh no, I can't tell people this. I can't tell people not to fast on the Day of Atonement. That we have to fast on the Day of Atonement. That's like telling people not to rest on the Shabbat. No, it's not. It's a totally different thing. So where are we going next? Not resting on it? No. It's a high Shabbat. It's always going to be a high Shabbat. There's 7 high Shabbats every year, and there's a weekly Shabbat. And we rest. But our behavior on those feast days is what we're looking at. Is what I'm trying to dissect these days. We've looked at wearing 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗖𝗛. We've looked at holding up the bread and the cup at Passover and being all serious and somber. What for? Yahusha wasn't serious and somber, not once he arose. He went there for the joy. The joy. And so I want to tie in that theme today, because the whole concept of the Day of Atonement being the most serious day of the year, and it was for the high priest anyway. It was freaking freak out if you were the high priest, because you didn't know if you were going to come back alive. For those who don't know, the Day of Atonement was the day that the high priest, Aaron to start with, would go into the most set apart place, the Holy of Holies, the most set apart place of the tabernacle. We're going to go into all that soon. I'm about to start. In fact, I might start tomorrow, recording Exodus. But for now, those of you who know, the high priest went into the most set apart place where the Ark of the Covenant sat, in the inner veil, the inner sanctum that was separated by a curtain. And no one could look at, because that was Yahusha's presence. And as we know, no one can look upon Yahusha's presence and survive. And there's a whole amazing thing I want to go into. I don't know if I'll touch on it today, about Yahusha's presence on this earth. But Yahusha's presence is like a perfect ball of light and goodness. And anything that, like one of those bug catchers that glow, any kind of fly or insect things, any kind of uncleanliness just gets zapped in its presence, in his presence. So it's not even a question, and he doesn't have a choice about it. It's who he is. Darkness cannot be in the presence of his light. So because Adam and Chua, broke his instructions and did their own thing, they allowed unclean behavior. They allowed wickedness and evil into the earth. So Satan took over the earth, took over the ownership, because as we know, who you obey, who you behave after, is who you serve, who owns you. So that one day affair on the Day of Atonement, where the high priest, he would go in there with the blood and he would sprinkle it over the Ark of the Covenant to atone. That word atone is very interesting. Atone for all the lawless behavior, all the evil that had been committed in the camp of Israel that year. I mean, there were sacrifices going on every single day in the outer court, and there was all that sort of hustle and bustle of activity going on in the inner court, but not in the holy, set apart, most set apart place. No activity went on in there, because no one unless Musha was specifically invited in by Yahusha, no one was to go in there, otherwise they'd be struck dead, because that's where the presence, that's where the cloud and the fire was from Yahusha. So you couldn't go into Yahusha's presence because we are in our flesh unclean vessels. And the whole idea of our flesh is very relevant on this Day of Atonement too. That's probably why Yahusha got their attention back then by making them fast that day, a day of prayer and fasting. But let's skip forward 4,000 or 5,000 years. I mean, what does prayer and fasting mean to you? I'm going into my inner sanctum to pray and fast for an answer from Yahusha. It's all a bit religious, and, prayer is just communication. You do it the scripture says, pray without ceasing. That's how our lives are to be, and if we're not yet, that's why we're overcoming the world, overcoming our desires and the flesh, and that thing we're in. I want to read some of that too. Christopher wrote that a few days ago, because it's all tying in with this harvest feast thing. In fact, I'll read it now while I'm talking about it. Christopher was reiterating what was said at the feast and the last video I did. And he said, everything that we do at the feasts are shadows and traditions. Mark said, if we gather and we are more into the trumpets, the food, who made the food, dressing in traditional garb, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗧, do the shouting and disturb our neighbours, blowing shofars, have meetings and prayer, then we are missing the whole meaning of preparing ourselves for the second coming. Grasping this? We should gather together clothed in sincerity and truth. That was what the last video was about, coming together in sincerity and truth. That was the theme of the Passover. Remember that KFC and Red Bull video I did? It's not about the symbols, about what you hold up, what you eat and drink. It's about coming together in sincerity and truth. That's the same for every feast, guys. So, I'll keep repeating this until people get it, but we come together to be honest and genuine, and most of us are not. We're so used to going out into the world, taking off our dad hat, putting on our hairdresser or job hat, whatever you are in your career, taking that off, being a father, being a husband, being all these things to different people, being a yes man, whatever you've got to be to people all the time, not being genuine, not being sincere and truthful. That's what we have to train ourselves in, sincerity and truth. This sweet statement told me, yes, what is the use of focusing on doing old traditional stuff? What's the use of focusing on doing old traditional stuff and missing the essence of how Yahusha wants us to approach him at his gates? It's all about approaching him at his gates, wasn't it? That's why Yahusha came into the camp of Yisrael, because he wanted to be with them. He wanted to be with them, to bless them, to set them up as an example to the whole world. Look, this is me in this nation, and look how amazing it is, and look how they're victorious in everything they do, blessing, abundant. You could have this too if you would come and follow my instructions and love me. Of course, Yisrael did all the wrong things and didn't get used as an example, except of what not to do. There is a global argument on whether we should be using ram's horns or blowing a silver trumpet. Do you think this distracts from the main issue of being clothed in sincerity and truth? Aren't we supposed to be getting our wedding garments clean? All this discussion and blowing ram's horns and hammering together pieces of wood and putting vines up, and that's next week, that's Sukkot. But all this outward stuff we're doing so that we can feel, oh yes, we've done it now. Yes, we've done it. I've read my scripture portions today. I've not eaten for the last 24 hours, and then you start whinging and complaining about it. And then we're going to have a big feast and hog and hoard and gorge ourselves with food after the fast. And can you see how this is just becoming ridiculous? This is like a form of Christianity in itself, or Judaism in itself. It's not seeing the point. It's like preschool. Look, Hunter, look at the moon. Do you think Hunter's looking at the moon, or is he looking at my finger? He's looking at my finger. No, not my. Look at up there, the moon. No, he's looking at. We're looking at the finger instead of looking at what the shadows point to. And where do all shadows point to? All shadows end at the feet of Yahusha himself. And so, I'll finish this first. Then he goes into what the trumpet is. Have a look how we are to be sincere in our daily behaviour. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we would control that thing we are in, our bodies? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we control that thing we're in and behaved sincerity instead of what we are letting come from our flesh? Isn't this a better meaning to the feast? The way Mark expresses to us that Yahusha wants us in sincerity and truth, not with traditions and offerings of the shadows of things. Shadows, those shadows. I mean, those shadows are amazing. The scriptures that say everything written in the scripture is for lessons and teaching and reproval and illustration and to show us and teach us and guide us and everything. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we just look at what it is and just copy it. Oh, that's what we've got to do. Oh, we have to understand it. So you don't have to blow shofars. You don't have to gather together and have some religious ceremony. If you've got people nearby that you love and they're in Yahusha and you want to gather together and have a meal, have a good time. And that applies for all of the 7 feasts if you want to come together. If you can't come together for all of them, come together for the ones that you want to. It's between you and Yahusha. That's the whole point I want to make here. And in regards to the Day of Atonement, like I was saying before, the Day of Atonement was that one, it was sacred to the early Israelites because, and particularly the high priest, because Aaron had to go in there once a year and he'd have little bells around the hem of his garment, because if there was any uncleanliness in him, any wicked behaviour in him, he'd be zapped on the fly catcher. Zapped, and he'd drop dead. He didn't. Other ones did, but not him. And they would have to pull him out. They'd have a rope tied around his ankle and they'd pull him out because they couldn't go in there because they'd be zapped too. So the whole point of our flesh, the evil in our flesh, the Day of Atonement in the future is when Yahusha is going to transform our flesh. So you see the idea of flesh, and then Yahusha back then is using the illustration of afflicting your flesh. So today when Yahusha said that to me, I can't say this, come on. We have to fast, it's atonement. And he's like, why? Didn't I do everything there is to do? And now I'm finishing my work in you. Because it's all about his presence on this earth. He, step by step, was gaining territory, sneakily gaining territory back of his marriage home, his earth. And it started, and I'm going to go into this in much more detail when we talk about the tabernacle, but his creation was time and space. You could say matter as well, but matter is included in space. So his creation is time and space. Time and space. So for a small amount of time and a small amount of space, he had possessed his earth back when the tabernacle was built. That was the whole purpose of the tabernacle. In this little rectangle here, on this earth, I've claimed back my earth. And on this 7th day, which he'd set apart and put his presence on, his anointing on, I've claimed back my time. Time and space is his creation. So for that small amount of time and space, he had claimed back his creation. So if we shoot forward 5,000-6,000 years, where is that today? Where is the tabernacle? That's the space. Where is time? Where is his time? Well, the time hasn't changed. It's a 7-day week, and on the 7th day, he's set it apart. He's anointed it. And as far as the space goes, the only place you will find Yahusha's presence on this earth is in his tabernacle, in his dwelling place. Where is his dwelling place today? So can you see how we are little tabernacles, dwelling places, walking around? I mean, this is all in scripture. There's nothing revelational. But can you see how if we don't let this come through, nobody's ever going to see it. See it. Not hear about it, see it. And when I'm talking about seeing something, I'm talking about feeling a behavior, feeling a type of loving, genuine, sincerity, truthful, when you look into somebody's eyes, genuine love. Not just sprouting out all this scriptural stuff at people, not posting stuff as, billboards all over you. I'm not talking about all that stuff. I'm talking about the real thing that Yahusha had. Did Yahusha have a big sign on his back that said, kick me? No. Did Yahusha have a big sign on his back that said, repent, for the reign of Yahuwah is near. Follow me. Come on. He's got it written all over him. No, because he was cunning. He understood, and he was looking for certain people that would follow him, just like he is today. And those who can grasp this. So I'm sorry if this upsets you about the trumpets and about the bread and the cup and the, building Sukkoths and booths, things like that. I'm sorry if this upsets you. I mean, it upset us too, because we're thinking, we've got to do this. I want to please Yahusha. Apart from our behaviour, don't you understand that there's nothing we do that can please you? He loved us before. He loved us before he even he made the 10 commandments an official 10 instructions, an official law legislation. He loved us before that. He loved them. He delivered them by the blood of the Lamb long before Sinai. Well, a month anyway. So can you see that we can't please him like that? We need to come to him broken and say, what do you want me to do, Father? So in regards to this Day of Atonement, and I hope I'm getting this message out there clearly enough, the whole point of the Day of Atonement was atoning. That's what I was going to tell you. I looked up the word atone because I dealt with it in Exodus, but that was a couple of months ago when I wrote that. So to atone, the Hebrew word is kafar. To cover. The Day of Atonement was about Aaron going into the most set apart place to present Yisrael before Yahusha with the blood, of course. Yahusha won't accept anything that's not covered in blood. So atonement is to cover, to cancel, cleanse, forgive, pardon, purge, reconcile, and restore. That's what atonement is for. So do you think by you fasting tomorrow, what's that for? Well, I'd say that we can understand how much power the flesh has over us. Don't you recognize that every day? Those of us who are in this battle, those of us who are yearning to fight and run our race and overcome, this is a daily occurrence, 365 days a year. You don't need to take away my food for me to see that. And this is not for me just to say, because I don't want to not eat tomorrow. I mean, I was very fully prepared, my wife and I, not to eat tomorrow. But this has just come to me this morning, and I'm kind of having this conversation out loud with you, with Yahusha. What's it all about? It's an outward shadow. And it was all about the harvest feasts back then. He was using their day-to-day lives to get their attention about his blood covenant, his instructions, to wash their minds clean of all the pagan filth, and so that they would pass it on to their children, so that when he came in the flesh, they would click in and go, this is the Messiah, he's come to deliver us. But, as usual, paganism got involved, and 𝗪 got involved, and they never saw the point. And so they were there doing their religious rituals, still on the Yahudim, still holding the covenant as such, but not flexible at all. They didn't even see. You should just walk past the temples, walk past the synagogues, and they're in there doing all their bells and smells and madness. And he went off and found other people to talk to because they weren't interested. Are we going to become like that? Are we going to be in some ex-Christian, Yahudaistic, Messianic, Nazarene religious hangover? Keep going further than that, brothers and sisters. Find Yahusha. Yahusha's not interested in the denominations, what you label yourself. He's not interested in any of that. He's interested in you. And only you. Between you and him. So, prayer and fasting, the instructions, the shadows, the types and shadows that we use as our teaching aids, they transform throughout the covenant. Remember we've been talking about that? They transform because Yahusha breathed life into them. So this is what I wanted to say. The Day of Atonement has been coined as the most solemn day because it's the day that we are to reflect upon our sinfulness, reflect upon our wickedness before a perfect and good Creator. That's good, but what did Yahusha do about that? Yahusha paid the ultimate price and bought back his bride legally, because it's not only about buying us back because of our unclean behavior, it's because of our unclean natures as well. And I'm going to talk about that in the next series too. Not only our behaviors, but our nature. We're all born with a wicked nature. That's why when we come out of the water, we have a new nature, a nature that is governed by the instructions that are written on our circumcised hearts. That's our nature, a renewed spirit, a renewed covenant within us. But our behaviors haven't been delivered. Just look at all the stuff that you've done. Look at all the wicked behavior you've done since you've been immersed. Isn't that proof? That's where Yahusha empowers us to keep going, to control that thing we're in. Christopher put another one up similar to that. Are you in control of the thing you are in, that thing you are in? Or are the things inside that thing in control of you? Are you controlling that thing, this tabernacle, this dwelling place? On the Day of Atonement, if there was any uncleanliness, the high priest, the high priest would be struck dead. And we're not looking to that priesthood anyway. The priesthood of Louis, the Levitical priesthood, was a secondary quality of priesthood because it was teaching the people how to atone, for their lawless, evil behavior. Instructions were given to Musha, and then knowing that we are humans and won't be able to obey properly, won't be able to keep it together because we are wicked, he brought in the sacrificial system under the Levitical priesthood. But that's not his priesthood. We're not looking to Aaron. I don't want to be Aaron standing there, building a golden calf. I don't want to look to him. I want to look to the guy who walked up the mountain, had the balls to walk up the mountain and, put himself in the fire, literally. Put himself in Yahusha's presence. I want to see your face. Let me see your face, Father. After everything he'd been through, he wanted this relationship. Musha was the one who we look to back in that context. He's the one, not Aaron, the high priest. Musha was both. He pleaded with Yahusha, pleaded with him, don't destroy these people. I will give up my life. Take my life, take my relationship, my eternal everything. Snuff me out. Just don't do this evil you're talking about to these people. He offered himself up in place of the whole nation of Israel. And of course, he was a type of Yahusha, looking towards Yahusha, the example. That's who we're looking at, guys. Yahusha and what he did. So the whole concept of coming together in sincerity and truth is not just amongst the body of believers, it's between you and Yahusha too. Who are you when no one's looking? That thing that you're in, all those sneaky things, thoughts, desires, things that you look at, things that you do, things that you say, things that you want, all these sneaky things that you keep in your heart, that thing that you're in, this vessel, is dulling out the essence of Yahusha in the tabernacle. Remember, the only place that Yahusha dwells on this earth is in his dwelling place, which is us. So do you think by afflicting your vessel for 24 hours, because the Jews told me to, because in the Old Testament it tells me to, the Old Testament said a lot of things. Not even an Old Testament doesn't exist. The ancient scriptures say a lot of things, but we have to understand the context, brothers and sisters. So for that reason, and this wasn't an easy thing to come to, but I'm not fasting on the Day of Atonement anymore. It's going to be a day of celebration, or in the case of tomorrow, I'm going to start filming Exodus for you all so that we can get a leg up on all that. But I just want you to understand that it's not about the natural fulfillment. Yahusha, I mean, it's fascinating to look at all this. Yahusha told them to make sure you're clean. Cleanse yourselves. It's a day of atonement. Cleanse yourselves. No sexual behavior, intercourse, nothing like that. Wash all your garments. This is a most set apart day, the Day of Atonement. You will all present yourselves before the tabernacle. The high priest will go into the most set apart place with the blood to offer up for all the unintentional behavior of Yisrael. So, what did Yahusha do about that? Yahusha's washed us clean. He's washed us legally clean before the Father, that Yahusha can look upon us now and have relationship with us and dwell among us. So, brothers and sisters, enjoy the Day of Atonement and recognize what it's all about. Understand the shadow. Understand what Yahusha did. He became our high priest and our mediator. High priest and mediator. The whole idea of atonement ties in with substitution. He substituted ourselves because, that was the other thing I wrote down from our scriptures, where there is disobedience and lawlessness, there must be death. Where there's disobedience and lawlessness, there must be death. That's just the universal principles of Yahusha. You disobey me, you die. So why aren't we struck dead? Why didn't people, some did, why didn't people just get struck dead on the spot? Because someone's blood had to be shed. If you do the wrong thing, someone's blood has to be shed. Yahusha was the substitution. He was the solution to connect mankind with his Creator. So in this place, and this place only in our vessels, it's the only place where the dimensions are aligned. That we can't have open, 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓, inside ourselves. We can though, when he dwells with us inside our vessel, if we're behaving the right way. I'm trying to get this out. It might be a bit muddled because I'm only thinking about it today, but the open shamayim is the open dimension, the dimensional rift. It's connected within us when Yahusha lives inside us, and he's come to live inside us. So therefore, that was the whole purpose of the scriptures. For that to happen, there was a break, and he wants to come together with us. Now, admittingly, he's only come together with a small portion of his essence, and we're looking to the day where it's completely consummated. We're only in the marriage betrothal right now. We're waiting for the consummation. And on that day, remember, on the day of the shout, is when the reapers and the fire and everything happens on this earth. The sun will go dark, the moon will go red, and the dead in Yahusha will be raised on Yom Teruah, on the trumpets. And then 10 days later, which is tonight, all the rest of us who are alive walking around will be transformed. Does that mean that's the day when the fire comes? Is it all on one day? It makes sense to me that we'll be raised up, and no flesh can be in his presence, and no flesh can withstand fire either. So it makes sense to me that will be the day we are transformed, putting off flesh. So not only were we told back at the tabernacle times to afflict our flesh, and now we're being told to overcome our flesh, to run our race, overcome the flesh, that thing that you're in, the flesh. And then we look forward to the day where our flesh will be gone. So it is all about our flesh, but it's about a much deeper understanding than just clocking in your scorecard, not eating for the next 24 hours. Blow the shofar's horn, read my scriptures, then I went back to my miserable life. Can you see how that's shadow talk? Living in the valley of the shadow dwellers. I've got my zeets and my t-shirts and my scriptures and my shawls and my things stuck to my head, and I'm doing the scriptural feasts with my bread and my cup and my shofar, and I'm sitting under my sukkah in the middle of the day, You know, like, can you see how this is just ridiculous? This has become a religion in itself, religious behavior, because there's no life in that. When Yahusha comes in, you recognize that you don't have to change your dressing, unless you're dressing like a whore, showing too much flesh. But I'm saying, you don't have to change the way you dress. You don't have to change jobs. You don't have to change, life as such. The change happens within us. It's a behavior revolution. Yahusha's preparing his bride from the inside, So get involved, brothers and sisters, and just think about your flesh, that thing that you're in. I would much rather, eat or don't eat. I don't care what you do, it's fine. But I'm not fasting anymore, because I just think it goes hand in hand with the shofars and the bread and the cup and the 𝗧𝗓𝗓𝗓 and all these shadow things that, like Sunday school, it's to teach as examples and things like that. But once you've got Yahusha living inside you and you can hear his voice, and you think, and that's why he said to me this morning, why are you fasting? Do you even know why? Oh, because you told me to. That was the only significance I had. So then I started thinking about the high priest, thinking about the Day of Atonement, thinking about the tabernacle, thinking about it all, piecing it all together like a puzzle. And I'm thinking, what is the point of that? How is me not eating going to have anything to do? Like I said, I'm happy to not eat. It's not that. It's not just an excuse so I can go and eat, because I eat every other day of the week. It's not that. I want to please Yahusha. And so he's put this in me to say, you don't have to fast, guys. It's not about fasting, prayer and fasting. Communicating with Yahusha all day, every day, aren't you? You should be. So I'd like to tie in with what Christopher said at our last feast last week, that the Day of Atonement is all about controlling that thing that we're in. So that's what I think the point of the Day of Atonement is. Controlling that thing that you're in, your fleshly vessel. That's how you afflict. Hey, okay, it's coming to me now. That's how you afflict your vessel, not by food. Some people give up food, some people give up coffee, some people give up sex for a day, some people give up all these things, afflicting your vessel from the outside. That's not how you afflict your vessel. That's not how you fast. The fasting is within. The fasting is saying no to all these things that want to bombard you, no to the thoughts and the fleshly desires that want to raise themselves up inside you. Say no, ignore them. Don't talk to them, but just ignore them. That's the meaning of the Day of Atonement, saying no to them and to that thing, this wicked, hideous thing that we have to live in, until such a day that he rips through the fabric of his dimension and then rips open, just like he ripped himself open at the Transfiguration. Remember with Musha and Eliyahu? It's like he opened himself up in this big ball of light, cosmic light of who he was. And they said, do you want us to set up tabernacles for them? Yeah, good one, guys. Go back to sleep, They didn't understand it back then either. We have a small down payment of that essence that is him inside us. And so we're waiting for him to completely inhabit and fill us, consummate and consume, and have us rip open our flesh and throw it away. Who wants it anyway? That's our great expectation, guys, our hope of our deliverance. I hope I've come through at the end. It was a bit confusing at the beginning, sorry, but I'm getting it together while I'm talking to you. The whole point of the Day of Atonement is afflicting, saying no, but not just on that day. Every day. That's how you run your race. That's how you overcome the evil, that thing, hideous, wicked thing that you're in, that wants to shut your mouth and shut your eyes and shut your heart to Yahusha's essence coming out of you, to anybody who might need it, and to him, to stop you from communicating with him, cut your connection off, because the only connection between dimensions is you. In your home, the only connection to another dimension is you, and possibly your spouse. So, because that's what his ruach is for, to connect the dimensions. That's what his blood was for. Understand that when you come to Passover. Understand when you come to the day of the shout, the trumpets. It's not about blowing a trumpet. It's about, is Yahusha coming back today? Are we ready? Yeah, well, he didn't come back this year, did he? He didn't come back last week. So we've got another year to prepare ourselves, guys, which is amazing. Maybe he'll come back next year. The whole point of the Day of Atonement is not to just cut food out of your life, because that's just surface understanding. If you want to do that, if you find it's helpful, it's part of your religious tradition, that's fine. Go ahead, but understand the deeper meaning. Afflicting your vessel, afflicting your body all the time. Put it off the flesh. Hear and do, hear and do. It's just very practical stuff. That's a mess, clean that up. That's dirty, clean that. What can I do for Yahusha? Start in your own bedroom. If you're a single person living in your parents' home, start in your own bedroom. If you're a person living in your own home with your own family, start in your own home. It's not about big grand ministries, turning the camera on and doing all this stuff, pretending to be something you're not. That's not genuine. That's not truth and sincerity. Start in your own home with your own family. Sincerity and truth. It's been over half an hour, guys. I just wanted to drop you a line because it's Atonement tonight for us in Australia. And I ain't fasting no more, because I've got an amazing understanding, and half of it's come to me while I'm talking to you, but I just want you to be excited. Yahusha's fulfilled all the feasts. That's what I want to tell you too. About time itself. Did you realize that Yahusha was not sacrificed 2,000 years ago? Because on this earth, physically, in the physical dimension, yes, he did sacrifice himself just over 2,000 years ago. But spiritually, I mean, he had to go into the other dimension and cleanse the higher dimension. That dimension's not in time. Yahusha lives outside of time and space. He lives out of this creation, outside of it. He created it, so he lives outside of it, which means Yahusha wasn't sacrificed for you and me 2,000 years ago. Yahusha's sacrifice has no beginning or no end. Wrap your head around that doozy. Yahusha's sacrifice has no beginning and no end. That should give you a bit of understanding why he allowed certain people back in the ancient days to have his presence. Oh, it was only external. No, it wasn't. There were certain people that it says he filled them temporarily with his presence. How could he do that the day of Pentecost? No, because he chose to. And because his blood sacrifice has no beginning and no end. Do you understand that? So that puts a whole new spin on everything. And isn't it amazing to live in this day and age instead of back then when they had to slaughter animals anyway to wash their minds? He's not using the concept of animal sacrifices to wash our minds. He's using our day-to-day circumstances, our trials and tribulations and pressures and financial things and business and people and families and kids and spouses. And he's using everything in your day to get your attention, to teach you, to prepare you, so that when he arrives, you'll be ready. You'll recognize him. It'll be amazing. So it's fresh. It's current. His blood was shed for you today, on this very feast day, the Day of Atonement. The great high priest went into the most set apart place. He ripped open the fabric of time and space. He rent the veil in the tabernacle, and his blood and body was broken on that mercy seat, on the ark of the king. He was sacrificed, and he atoned. He bought back his bride. So that's the purpose of this fasting, feasting day, brothers and sisters. It's not about food. It's not about afflicting your being through food. I'll say it again, flogging a dead horse here. It's not about the food or drink. It's about righteousness, peace, and joy in the set apart spirit. Eat tomorrow, don't eat tomorrow. Blessed is the man who does not feel guilty about what he says or does. If you think I'm just going on and this is just some big BS excuse to not fast tomorrow, then that's your prerogative. But I just feel very excited about this because Yahusha spoke to me and said, say it. So receive it however you will. But I'm very excited, brothers and sisters, because it's all about controlling that thing you're in. And let's face it, half the time we don't. That's the struggle. That is the struggle. The more you overcome that thing, influence and that thing that we're in, the happier we'll be, because Yahusha can dwell in us more and more and more. He can trust our behavior. He can trust the integrity, the structural integrity of the tabernacle. You know, he knows we won't disappoint him. He can trust us. Anyway, I've rambled on enough, brothers and sisters. Enjoy the feast, and I might drop you a few words or lines before, say something before the next week. The next week is Sukkot. So if I don't get a chance to do a video, you don't have to build a structural thing and go out there and read out there and do all this madness people do. Watch the leaves die over the course of a year like our bodies do. It's not what it's about, brothers and sisters. It was all about Yahusha. He was born at Sukkot, and his only purpose for being born was so that he could die for us. So, and then of course, looking to the future, Sukkot is the wedding feast, and the 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, the joy of Torah, the wedding. Finally, the culmination of all scripture will be fulfilled. The marriage supper, the marriage home will be complete. New heavens, new earth, new Jerusalem. See you later, guys.